Astonishing testimony from retired military pilots.
We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
Craft defying physics.
We have nothing that can stop in midair and go the other direction.
Chilling words from a whistleblower.
Have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
David Grusch is a former intelligence officer who says the government has something to hide. Perhaps even a spacecraft.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human.
Lawmakers say the Pentagon is not being upfront.
We can't trust a government that does not trust its people. We're going to uncover the cover-up.
Grusch testified that some military personnel faced hostile encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena, but could not get specific.
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity...
By UAPs or by people within the federal government?
Both.
Eric Burleson is a skeptic. He asks how an advanced race could get to Earth, but not be able to survive a crash.
I find a little bit far-fetched.
Lawmakers demand transparency.
If there's nothing to conceal, let Congress go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Dugway Proving Ground, or even Groom Lake in Nevada.
The Pentagon has documented UFO reports since last year. The head of military intelligence, Ronald Moultrie, says there's no evidence anything is of alien origin. On Capitol Hill, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
Chad, thanks so much. Let's talk about this even further, like I said, with one of those members of Congress who are instrumental in even having this hearing today, and that is the Republican from Tennessee, Tim Burchett. He joins me now. Congressman Burchett, thanks so much for being with us. My first question to you, though, is did you get the answers you were seeking today from holding this hearing?
Yeah, I really did. I guess I'm not an attorney, and I wouldn't ever try to be one. I've heard good attorneys say, don't ask questions unless you already know the answer. And I've been kind of in tune with this issue for many years, and so I was grateful to the members for the great questions they asked, and that it was a bipartisan effort. But I was also very much aware that the Pentagon and our military have been covering this issue up for years, and it was very evident to me when I proposed an amendment to the TSA reauthorization bill. It basically just said that if an airline pilot were to spot an anomaly or a UFO or something, and they make a report to the government, that they would have to do that to Congress, and it was blocked. And I was told, it wasn't even allowed a vote, and I was told it was by the intelligence community. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not too sure about when a government bureaucrat tells your elected officials, in this case your Congress, what they can and what they cannot have. And so it's, they've continuously done this. We went to Eglin Air Force Base, myself, Representative Luna, Representative Gates. We're told we were going to be able to interview pilots. We're going to see pictures, going to see film of these craft. And basically we were briefed on some stuff that was pretty incredible, but it had nothing to do with that issue. And then if it hadn't been for Representative Gates and his legal mind, we were escorted out back to the general's quarters. I remember they brought us or his office or whatever, and brought us a nice fruit tray. And then we went on, and he made some calls to the Pentagon, and they brought these pilots in. We were allowed to talk to one basically, and we saw some things that were not of this world, but we were basically denied this, and it's just a continuation throughout this whole process. We've been bucked by staff, we've been bucked by Congress. We were, even when we had our press conference, if it hadn't been for one of your colleagues on your very station here that informed me that they were sticking us basically in a little bitty room, or it was under construction for the press conference, which to me was just outrageous.
Sure.
And just the whole thing has just been, and it's clear we are over the target. There's some people, they're squealing, and they know we got the goods.
Yeah.
And these were 3 impeccable witnesses.
Yeah.
They're with the credentials that we needed. Decorated veterans, These are all great American patriots. And that doesn't mean a whole lot up in Washington, D.C., but I'll tell you, it means a whole heck of a lot back in Tennessee and in Florida, where Representative Luna and Representative Gates is from. So, and Representative Moskowitz, I might want to mention him. It was a bipartisan committee.
Yeah. Congressman, so I just wanted to get your thoughts, though. It does seem, even with some of the DOD's stonewalling from getting all of this out there, that Pandora's box, is now open, and what has been so opaque is now becoming ever more transparent about looking into, this specific issue. Do you anticipate, after today's really bombshell hearing, that more people are going to come forward with reports of sightings of some of these UAPs, and that even more whistleblowers might come forward within the DOD itself? Do you anticipate that?
I do, and they already have been. This is just opening the floodgates, brother. And part of the problem too now is the Pentagon knows they can't keep their thumb in it any longer, and so what are they doing? They've got the Senate over there pushing for funding for a new department or something to catalog all this information. We don't need that. What we need is NASA. We need the Pentagon, Department of Defense. Just release these files. Quit giving us these redacted pieces of paper that look like Swiss cheese. Somebody shot it with a 12 gauge because there's nothing on it, and start bringing it forward. And two, Congress needs to exercise its power of the purse. We need to get some guts. It doesn't need to just be me and a couple other people talking about the wasteful spending that the war pimps over at the Pentagon are doing. They're audited every year, and they've never passed an audit. And they don't have to. The arrogance of them is incredible. Unelected bureaucrats
Congressman,
are telling your elected officials what to do.
Congressman, just last question for you. I want to get and stick to the nature of the questioning, your questioning today in the hearing, and I want to get you to respond to this just lastly. You asked David Grusch if he had, quote, personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology. He answered in the affirmative. Why did you ask that question? Why did you feel like you needed to ask that question?
I've been told by numerous sources that was the case, and we've had people threatened, and we had people that were supposed to testify, and then they received a phone call and decided maybe it wasn't in their best interest. So this is hardball. You're talking about an energy source that shows no heat trail. That in the Tic Tac videos, I would ask your audience to Google Tic Tac, not TikTok, not the Chinese Communist propaganda, but Tic Tac like the candy. And watch those videos and listen to what those pilots say. They defy everything we have. These are craft that are not of this world. No one in this world has these craft. It's not the Chinese, it's not the Russians, and it's not us. Because if it was us, we wouldn't be experimenting with them around our $50 million aircraft and the best trained pilots in the world, and we've had 14 documented near misses. So I think there's a lot to be said for this. We got to have some more hearings, but the cover up needs to end. And I appreciate folks contacting their legislators and saying enough with this. Let's have some transparency.
All right, Congressman Tim Burchett there, the Republican from Tennessee. We do appreciate your time. We know you've had a busy day, and we'll definitely be speaking again. Thanks so much.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate y'all.
Okay, so what we want to do right now is just continue to play a little bit more of this hearing today on Capitol Hill, and you're going to hear from these three witnesses really describing in detail, and I hate to use this cliche here, things that are out of this world. You've heard the term used time and again in this hearing today. Let's listen.
By thanking you all for your service to our country and for sharing your voices today and your courage to be here as well. To Mr. Graves, particularly grateful to you to spend some time that we had for you to share with candor some of your experiences, so I appreciate that as well. I do want to thank all the members of our subcommittee today and also those that are here and have waved on for their incredible interest in this issue, particularly to Congressman Burchett. I know that your leadership has brought us to this place today, and I want to thank you for that, as well as everyone else that's been engaged in this work. I also want to thank the oversight staff, who I know has been working very hard to ensure that today's hearing is serious, that it's transparent, and that it also provides appropriate answers, as our oversight body always demands. Now, it's really important that we're here in a bipartisan way to have this conversation, which really, to the heart of it, is about national security and key to the subcommittee's core purpose. This is the subcommittee on national security of the Oversight Committee. Now, our witnesses will testify today that UAPs have posed a serious safety threat, and we must understand this. More broadly, we're dealing with real questions that get to the heart of our faith in government. Faith in our institutions, as we all know, is at an all-time low. Partisanship and alternative facts make it too easy to doubt narrative or our institutions. But this hearing will offer the public unique perspectives, building on years of reporting by both federal agencies and the independent media. Now, some of the earliest reporting on this issue was a groundbreaking 2017 New York Times report, which revealed research, as we know now, on unidentified anomalous phenomena, as many call UFOs, by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Mr. Graves and Commander Fravor's experiences with UAPs have also been documented by the public, not just by the New York Times, but CNN and many other national news outlets. Now, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has published public reports documenting UAPs, and on June 9, 2022, NASA announced that the agency is commissioning a study to, of course, examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, the sheer number of reports, whistleblowers, and stories of unidentified anomalous phenomena should raise real questions and warrant investigation and oversight, and that's why we are here today. Now, pilots have reported encounters for years. Now, because of the stigma around reporting these incidents, we still don't have a complete picture of actually what's going on, particularly as our witnesses will testify on the civilian side, and that is a real problem that we have today in the country. Now, it's very important that we show that Democrats and Republicans in Congress can come together in a bipartisan way to cut through misinformation and to look at the facts in a serious and thoughtful manner. If we are to advance oversight and public disclosure, we must also gain the broad support of the public. We will succeed getting facts out to the public faster if there is a broad public support as part of the process. Now, I understand fully the Department of Defense is hesitant to share information that could also undermine our national security by revealing information on the capabilities of our own aircraft, our sensors, and other sensitive material. At the same time, many people believe that we're withholding information from them, and that is dangerous also. I believe in openness and transparency. That is also the role of Congress, and I want to trust that the American people will be able to weigh the evidence and make up their own minds. Now, we have incidents where sensors, sometimes even multiple types of sensors, detect things that we cannot explain. UAPs, whatever they may be, may pose a serious threat to our military or civilian aircraft, and that must be understood. Now, my career and training as a longtime and career educator and teacher and researcher tell me that we should never rule anything out.
All right, so those look like opening statements are happening right now. We wanted to replay a little bit of this for you there. What happened on the House side on Capitol Hill today? Everyone's talking about this hearing, what we have gleaned, what was revealed from it. So we just spoke with one of the members of Congress who was on the panel asking those witnesses questions. But we want to get into it a little deeper as well, not only talking about the politics of it, but also what was revealed and what does it mean, because it is somewhat difficult to comprehend the fact that terms like non-human biologics are even being discussed out in the open on Capitol Hill nonetheless. So right now, let's bring into the conversation some friends of the program here on Live Now from Fox, UFO expert Nick Pope, who joins me, who we have been relying on here throughout the course of the afternoon, and a friend of the program, Brian Bender, who has written about this extensively as well. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us, Brian and Nick. Nick, I want to start with you, though, about, I guess, your key takeaways from the hearing today. Did you find out anything that you had not heard before today?
Well, I think I've been talking to some of these people, so I kind of knew a little bit of what was coming, but I think what was extraordinary was hearing all these stories that you'd seen in the media, and you see them on UFO Twitter, but now we're seeing them on the floor in Congress, and that's hugely important because these three witnesses today testifying under oath, placing this on the record, and basically issuing a challenge, I think, to Congress to say, look, within the bounds of confidentiality and the laws about not divulging classified information without lawful authority, here is where to look. And there were some pretty heavy hints dropped about where to look. And David Grusch in particular essentially said, if we can get into the secure facility, we will tell you, I will tell you where these programs are.
Brian, that leads me to ask you the question, kind of the more political angle to this. The DOD is still really not going on the record with a lot of this. They're trying to throw cold water on this. In a statement, DOD spokeswoman Sue Goff said, investigators have not discovered, quote, any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. There is some tension with these whistleblowers today, these witnesses on Capitol Hill, and the larger DOD apparatus. Do you think they'll ever meet on good terms?
Well, two things come to mind on that question. The first is we have to understand that the Pentagon has an office now that was set up by Congress, last year by law, that is supposed to be the focal point for gathering up whatever we know or the government knows about UAP. It's still a very open question about whether that office, called AARO for short, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, it's kind of a terrible Pentagon acronym, is actually getting all of the information that might reside at the CIA, the National Reconnaissance Office, the National Geospatial Intelligence Office, the FBI. I mean, there are 24 or more intelligence agencies in our government. And the idea that they're all just digging through the files and just coughing up everything they know on this topic, I think just probably isn't the case. So I think the Pentagon is, in their defense, I think they're hamstrung to some extent. I mean, they don't necessarily know everything there is to know. And that's what I think Congress understands, that they need to force this issue, force these bureaucracies to come clean, so to speak, whatever that might be, whether it's little green men or alien bodies or crashed UFOs or, something short of that, maybe puzzle pieces, if you will. And the second part of that is if you listen to the Pentagon spokesperson's quote today, it's obviously very carefully worded. And I don't think that denial, which is what people read it as, necessarily is a denial. I think you could say what they said and still have, quote unquote, puzzle pieces that they have not quite yet figured out what they are. Okay. In other words, maybe they have something that really is out there, but they have not yet concluded scientifically, et cetera, exactly what it is and where it comes from. So that's sort of their out. They can say that and not really be lying.
Okay. Brian and Nick, it does seem like, and Brian, you know this so well, there's so many substrata and hierarchies within the DOD, different departments and agencies and sub-agencies where this kind of all filters down. And that's where kind of David Grusch, the key witness today, comes in. He was working for some of those agencies, really tasked with this mandate about finding out what this is and what the U.S. government knows about it. And first, I want to start with you, Brian, and then get you to chime in here, Nick. Is David Grusch a credible witness and whistleblower? Do you have faith in him that he is acting on his own goodwill?
I think the answer is yes. I mean, I've interacted with David a little bit, not recently, but in his government role. And I think he's, his resume stands up. Everyone who's worked with him, at least those that have come forth publicly, all, have given ringing endorsements that he's the real deal. He's a credible person. He has the background. He has the clearances. But the one caveat there real quick is that he is the first to say that his claims of crash retrieval programs, biologics, in other words, alien bodies or parts of bodies, is all secondhand. In other words, he was told this by people on the inside who claim to have had direct knowledge. Yeah. And so I think that's important. He hasn't seen what he's describing, but he does tell Congress that behind closed doors in a classified session, he can provide much more detail on the where and the when and the who and the why. Yeah. But until we see that, it's hard to know, Is it just a galactic game of telephone?
Yeah, and that was a caveat a lot today, where Grusch was essentially saying, well, I can answer that in a closed session. You know, Nick, I was also, kind of curious as well. We heard a lot about, the U.S. government's efforts to try to, hone whatever this technology of non-human origin, you heard that phrase a lot today, is, and you heard the phrase reverse engineer. What's going on there? Is there an effort underway, or did we learn that today, that the U.S. government is trying to reverse engineer some of this technology that we've never seen before?
Well, I think it's self-evident that if the United States has indeed recovered some craft, some maybe wreckage, but some intact, as David Grusch says, self-evidently, yeah, the scientists, the engineers, the military folks would want to figure this out, because it would be the ultimate upgrade to the United States inventory. I mean, if we could figure any of this out. And it's what's in government often called a sort of low probability, high impact scenario. Even if you're skeptical about this, the payoff, if any of this turns out to be true, is so vast that you need to be in the game. And I think Congress, what we saw today was Congress saying we need to be in the game. And the phrase that came up at the end of the hearing when they went around the witnesses and said, the quick fire round, as it were, is any of this a potential existential threat to the United States? And the answers were yes and potentially yes. That's important.
Yeah. But when you hear the term of non-human origin, it's so hard to conceive. I mean, how do they come to that conclusion or that determination? What evidence do they rely on? How do they make that determination? Brian.
I mean, it's the gazillion-dollar question, right? I mean, the official government position as of, today, July 26, 2023, is we don't have evidence of what you just described. Now we have a whistleblower who claims they're lying, effectively. And so what is the truth? My sense is it's somewhere in between, probably. There could be programs that are so secret that even the leadership of the Pentagon doesn't know about them. Certainly oversight committees in Congress don't know about them, especially if they were decades upon decades ago. But, again, I think what we saw today, which I guess was probably my biggest takeaway, is a very determined bipartisan effort in Congress to get to the bottom of this. Whether they will be able to get to the bottom of the rabbit hole, I think no one really knows. But they seem determined to throw punches and to ask questions and to write new legislation, forcing these agencies to do more, to gather more, to report more. And, I had an editor once who said the biggest stories don't just come out. They ooze out. Huh. And I think this is in that category. It's going to ooze out. If there is something there, it's not just going to be a big press conference and they pull the curtain back and, here's what we have. Yeah. It ain't going to be that simple, unfortunately, for all of us.
Okay. And, Nick, I mean, in your years of studying all of this, did you ever expect it would be out in full view on plain display, like in a hearing on Capitol Hill today? And you were kind of alluding to the fact that, you learned some things new, you heard some things you hadn't heard before. Did you ever expect that in your decades-long career studying all of this unidentified aerial phenomena?
Well, I think those of us who've looked at this from within government have always recognized that this is a defense, national security, and safety of flight issue. But no, I don't think I ever expected to see it get this kind of mainstream political engagement. And in these divided times, picking up on Brian's point, in these divided political times, in a sense, it's kind of refreshing that something has brought Republicans and Democrats so closely together in this quest for the truth. And how amazing that thing is something as interesting and important as UFOs.
Yeah, I mean, there was a line of questioning today to David Grusch, though, about whether or not he knows of, and I'm paraphrasing here, if there were any physical or professional threats against him or others in relation to, being a whistleblower, divulging some of this, to which he answered in the affirmative. But then we brought on Tim Burchett, the congressman from Tennessee, the Republican. He asked David Grusch if anyone has been murdered as part of the conspiracy to keep UFOs secret, and he kind of demurred there. I just want to end on that because that was really the most dramatic line of questioning, I thought. Was that for theatrics, Brian, do you think, or is that at play here?
I mean, I think it's important to mention that Congressman Burchett, who has been a leader on this issue, has also made some very outlandish claims himself without providing evidence. So I thought that was a good part theatrics, a little bit of, sort of the X-Files, and
Sure.
maybe a kernel of truth that there have been people who have been, have seen retribution if they have spoken out on this. But it's really hard to know. I mean, until we have more people like David Grusch coming forward, until Congress really sees the goods, I mean, we're still far away from, the truth is out there.
Okay. Nick, just lastly also, do you expect more whistleblowers? Do you expect more reported sightings now that it is really in full view?
Yes,
I hope
and
so.
yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who heads up Arrow, last testified to the NASA committee, he said that there were around 24 whistleblowers who had come forward. So there's definitely more to come, and there will be more congressional hearings for sure in the Senate and the House, not just the Oversight Committee that we saw today, but the Armed Services Committees and the Intelligence Committees.
Just one last point that I would make is just simply, two of the witnesses today are these former military pilots, Ryan Graves and David Fravor. And I think we'd be remiss if we don't highlight that they're coming at this issue pretty agnostic in terms of what these might be. And the point they're making is whatever you think these might be, credible military commercial pilots are reporting unidentified flying objects, unidentified aerial phenomenon nearly every day.
Wow.
And they don't know what they are. And they're a safety hazard potentially, not just for military pilots, for us, the flying public. And it's our government's role to know what's in our sovereign airspace, whatever it may be, whoever it might be. And I think a lot of the things that are up there probably have a very earthly explanation, but it sounds like some of them don't seem to. And so I think we're going to see more hearings. I think we're going to see more whistleblowers. At least, I hope so, because if this is all there is, I fear that, the conversation will sort of drip away and we won't get a lot of answers.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Gentlemen, Brian Bender, Nick Pope, thanks so much. That was a great conversation on this huge story today, and we'll talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you.